Welcome back, my living whole friends. So travel, nursing, housing, ins and out. This is quite the topic because you are going to spend the next 13 weeks at whatever location that you are going to be working at, and it's imperative that you have a good housing experience. Housing is also a safety concern. There's a lot of different types of housing, and there's a lot of different ways that you can do housing through either your company or personally you find it. I personally travel with my husband, my cat. My husband's an artist, so we have to find an extra studio space, so we are not the ideal travelers. So I can honestly say that I exhaust most all of the travel resources, and so this also has given me a lot of experience and perspective, both traveling to California as a solo female traveler for a shorter assignment, as well as traveling everywhere with my husband and my cat with not ideal circumstances. Travel nursing resources. So there are different ways that you can do housing. You can choose to find housing on your own using the housing stipend that your company supplies, or you can have your company find you housing. And there's also some companies that kind of do a hybrid of that. Sometimes you will find that companies are really good in taking care of their travelers. They'll help you find housing, but if you find it on your own, sometimes you can submit it to them as an option and they'll just take care of all the background stuff. Or you have companies that I personally have worked for one specifically that was like, you either find housing or you let us choose, and that was it. There wasn't any working together, or it was a little cold in that aspect. So I personally try to initially find housing on my own using the stipend that my company provides. And if you are choosing to find housing on your own, there are a lot of resources out there. You have furnishfinder.com, you have VRBO, Airbnb, you have Craigslist, but be careful on Craigslist. There are a lot of options and resources as far as those sites that will help you find one, unique rentals, but a rental specifically for you. And so that has been extremely helpful in us finding something that will accommodate our needs. When I fly out to California for my shorter assignments, I typically will go through Furnish Finder or something small, studio compact that I can get the most bang for my buck. So the other thing that goes hand in hand with this is if you as a traveler find housing that is way under your housing stipend, you get to keep all of that money. If you are finding housing on your own, all of that extra money goes into your pocket, and that helps increase your profit. So that's a tool that travelers use to try to boost their financial gain. However, if you are letting your company find housing, typically they keep all of that. So if they find you housing that, let's say they find you a studio apartment for $600, but your housing stipend is actually $1,200. Your company's keeping that extra. They're not going to give that money back to you. So there's kind of that fine line between figuring out what is going to be the best fit for you, or knowing that you have a really good recruiter that's going to get you good, secure housing that meets the standard of your stipend, if that makes sense. Because that $600 studio might be on not the greatest side of town, might not be the newest, most updated, but it's the cheapest that they could find. You see where I'm going? So in the resources, you also have to be very street smart with housing, specifically for travelers. Furnish Finder has been an excellent resource for me. I have found one housing on Craigslist, but that was for Seattle. I made many phone calls. We made a trip up because we were only 3 hours away to inspect it before we secured it. And so you absolutely have to make sure that you are not wiring money, that you are not caught in a position to where it's fraudulent. And you will find people that will take advantage of that. I have known travelers that have sent a first and last month's rent as well as a large deposit, and the company or the person that they are sending that money to has been fraudulent and they have lost all of that money. So be extremely smart as a traveler in securing your housing if you are finding it on your own. Try to use reputable resources like Airbnb, VRBO, things like that. And also do your research of the area. You want to ensure that you are in a low crime area, that you are in a very safe spot, because because your safety is a priority when you're traveling. Housing can be really straightforward. You can have it furnished, you can have it unfurnished. If you are finding housing on your own and it is an unfurnished unit that does a short-term lease, you will also be able to find, there's resources like Court that does furniture rental. Sometimes you can work out something with the leasing agency or office that you are renting from. Always be mindful too of your lease. Make sure that as much as your contract is a protection of you, you are adhering to your lease and you are agreeing under correct terms, and it is with someone that is legitimate. With renting as well, you always want to be a good traveler. Make sure that you leave the place well intact. You haven't absolutely destroyed it. There's not parties. But within that, if you get company housing, they will do a walkthrough form where you fill out all the little things that are wrong with your apartment. It is incredibly important for you to fill that out very thorough. I even go so far as to run the dishwasher in order to ensure that it is working, and I am not held accountable for whatever was wrong if I didn't run it before. Inspect everything from top to bottom. So just from my experience, anecdotally, one situation, for example, I had found housing, I sent it over to my company. It wasn't a typical spot that they rented to, but based on availability within the area, it was like, this seems to be our only option. And we were working together to try to find something. So when we arrived, the ladies that were helping us move in, do our inspection, I filled out all the sheets, which were the only thing that protected me. And when I filled out those sheets and had that documentation to a couple items within the apartment that had some wear and tear and minimal damage, nothing extreme, they then, when we moved out, those things that were damaged, because they knew my company would pay for anything, or so they thought, which were some of the offhanded comments that were made as we were moving in. Oh, well, your company will, they'll take care. It was a little uncomfortable, but I filled out everything like I was supposed to. And then when we moved out, they tried to claim those as damages that we had done, right? And my company advocated for me, and they were like, no, like, we have documentation. I have gone so far as to, if it is something like I'm a little leery about, I will take photos of it, and I have that timestamp photo on my phone. I've just been put in some unfortunate situations where people haven't been honest, and you have to make sure that you have the integrity and you are doing the right thing as well. So fill out your pre-move-in forms, very, very thorough. But past that, when we talk about housing safety, I've had one circumstance where they placed me in a high-rise building in downtown Worcester. When we arrived, I was like, holy moly, just to set the scene. When we pulled up to check in, a guy almost peed on our car. We saw people shooting up in an alleyway. Kevin and I were just like, we can't stay here. So we stayed the night. I had contacted my company immediately and was like, I don't feel comfortable here. This is what I saw. This is what's going on. And when I got to the hospital, one of my colleagues had asked me, where's your company housing you? And her brother-in-law was like a cop or something, and she was like, have them move you tonight. You are not staying there. Do you need a place to stay tonight? You need to find a hotel. You cannot stay there. Probably the scariest situation we've been put in, but again, it was just unfortunate, and the company that had placed me in that housing was the company that wouldn't let me find housing on my own or work with me. They were like, well, this is where you're staying. And so it was unfortunate that I had to kind of advocate strongly for myself in that sense. When we were moving our luggage out, the door accidentally closed behind us, and the keys, it automatically locked. And the door was so unsecure that we basically like jiggled the door and stuck like the credit card just barely in it, and it popped right open. And I'm thinking, we're right by the elevator, where it was just one of those circumstances where if you feel uneasy, or if you are in a bad side of town, and advocate for yourself, as well as fill out all your forms, make sure you are taking the necessary step to treat this as your business, because at the end of the day, you are going to be held accountable, or it is your safety. So really, that is the breakdown of housing. There's not a whole lot to it other than furnished, unfurnished, you find it, company finds it, but there's a lot of opportunity for resources in between all of that. So I hope that helps you figure out housing, and I will see you guys in the next one.